Austin and Alma had been married for 13 years. Their son was 9 and their daughter was 6. They were an ordinary family who did not stand out in society. Austin and Alma both worked, and their children attended kindergarten and school. The man loved his job. It brought him not only a good salary, but also pleasure, which could not be said about his wife. For Alma, work was hard, and every day she counted down the minutes until she could go home. Sometimes she would get so tired that she would cry in the bathroom, thinking no one could hear her. Vacation is such an alluring word that hides behind a lot of nice things: tasty food, new locations, the sea, the beach, and new, interesting acquaintances. Alma really wanted to go on vacation. In addition, she had a good reason. Her friend Sveta was going to the sea and invited her to go with her. Alma had money saved up, and she could afford the trip, so she urgently wrote an application for a leave of absence. She confronted Alma with the fact that she had already bought tickets. The husband took great offense. That's not the way to do it. He grumbled at his wife. We have to decide together. But Alma stood her ground, despite all of Austin's complaints. But he didn't want to give up either. In the end, they parted in a quarrel after a major scandal, in which each said a little more than he had planned. Back at the airport, she complained to her friend about her husband, who didn't want to understand her desire to vacation without him. Sveta reassured her, winked at her, and promised that she would soon forget both the quarrel and her husband. When they arrived at the hotel and checked in, Sveta admitted that she had come on vacation for a reason. For several months, she had been corresponding with a man from another city. They decided to meet on neutral territory. Alma wondered, "What about Fred?" she exclaimed when she heard about her friend's lover. "What about Fred?" The woman answered a question with a question. "I will come back and we will live like before. But those 10 days are only for me and for him." Sveta smiled dreamily, and Alma thought about it. Maybe she too can spend those 10 days not alone sulking at her husband, but with someone who will ask her bad mood. And then her friend, as if overhearing her thoughts, said that her lover was coming not alone, but with his brother. Alma decided that this was a sign. The men did not arrive until the next morning, so the evening was just her and Fred. They chose a restaurant they wanted to dine at and left there. From worrying about the infidelity that had not yet happened, Alma was nervous and overdid it with cocktails. Sveta had to return to the hotel with an insane friend dragging her on her back. In the morning, Alma had a headache. She barely opened her eyes and saw that her friend was already fully dressed and wearing makeup. Sveta wanted to meet her lover in all her glory. "You rest." She smiled when she saw that Alma was awake. "I will meet Bruno with Calvin. See you later." Alma recovered only in time for dinner, to which she had been invited by her friend and her acquaintances. She put on a smart dress that flattered her figure, and she and Sveta went to the appointed place. The men were already waiting for them, and Sveta introduced her friend to them. She immediately took a fancy to Calvin, and she flirted with him the whole night away, and they spent the night together. Everything was just as Sveta had told her. She stopped thinking about her quarrel with her husband, and about him too. Alma gave herself completely to the power of the moment and passion. She liked to think that she was doing something forbidden that no one would ever know about. Not once in all 10 days did her spouse call her. In fact, Austin was so deeply offended by his wife for this act that he decided until the last minute not to talk to her, until she herself realized what she had done wrong and apologized to him. What Austin did not know at the time was that Alma felt nothing of the sort. Just at that moment, as he thought about her return and how they would reconcile in the marital bed, Alma was kneeling in front of another man. The vacation flew by like the blink of an eye. The women were sorry to part with their lovers, but there was no way out. They all had to get back to real life. When Alma returned home, of course, she apologized to him, and he thawed out. He had missed his wife madly. Their lives began to fall back into place. Work, home, Children all began to settle down. The woman continued to correspond with Calvin. They chatted all day long while she was at work, and sometimes they called each other during their lunch hour on the video link. Alma realized that they would probably never see each other again, and their relationship was a nice vacation memory, but she couldn't stop talking to him for some reason. She liked the way he talked to her, the way he smiled when he answered her call. One day, he sent her an enormous bouquet of roses at work, and Alma began to think that her resort romance suddenly had a continuation that she hadn't planned. She kept pictures and videos on her phone of her and Calvin together, of the four of them at the sea. She liked to revisit it in the evenings while lying in the bathtub. For those moments, it was as if she was transported back to those happy and carefree 10 days, where she had no husband, no children, no work, and no responsibilities. There was only herself and her lover and the sea. Quite a lot of time had passed since then. Winter was coming, and the new year was approaching. Calvin persuaded Alma to go somewhere together for the January holidays, but she was against it. Her husband would certainly not forgive her for that, and they closed the subject. With a courier, he sent her a gift of flowers and a pendant around her neck. Alma was delighted. It was so sweet and unexpected that she even cried a little. She and Austin were getting ready for the holiday. Grocery shopping, gift shopping, preparing looks for New Year's Eve and corporate events. All this occupied her and her husband's heads the last few weeks before December 31. Alma was determined to stop communicating with her lover in the new year and to forget the whole situation as a wonderful, but still a dream. She didn't say anything to Calvin. She just decided to block him out on the night of January 1 wherever possible. But unfortunately, or fortunately, she didn't need to. On that unfortunate day, Austin forgot his phone at work. In the evening, out of boredom while his wife was in the shower, he decided to browse the feed on her social networking page. Just as he picked up his phone, a message popped up on the screen from someone named Calvin, who texted Austin to his wife that he missed her. Austin was taken aback. He opened his and Alma's correspondence and was dumbfounded. There were her provocative photos and intimate messages, and what got to him was that it was full of pictures from Alma's vacation. His wife caught him in the hall in his favorite chair. Austin sat there looking devastated. In his hands was Alma's phone. On the screen, the woman saw a photo of herself with Calvin. "You've got it all wrong," she blurted out. "I'll explain everything." "And I don't need to explain anything," Austin said it with all his might, holding himself back from screaming. He couldn't afford to wake the children up and scare them. "I don't have to explain. I don't need you to tell me anything." Her husband's mouth was filled with more profanity than Alma had ever heard from him in her entire life. He threw her phone to the floor and stomped on it with his foot. He only stopped when the screen was covered in a spider's web of cracks. Austin breathed heavily, staring at the floor. The pain of his beloved's betrayal was gnawing at him from the inside. It seemed to him that a little more and he would be torn. The divorce was swift. The spouses divided the property, the children. They, of course, stayed with their mother. That was the custom. But Austin didn't give up hope that he could talk them into moving in with him. Just then, Alma got laid off from her old job, and she had to find something in an emergency to support her family. She ended her relationship with Calvin, and she was wary of other men. All of them remained her lovers for a couple of nights, but with no one did she want to build a strong relationship. Some lonely evenings, Alma would reminisce about her and Austin's life, the wedding, and weep, thinking of only one thing. Why had she started an affair that had changed her life completely? But the answer to that question she could not find. The second story is even more interesting. My friend Nikia is going through a very bad period, nervous and sad. In short, he's been drinking like a soccer fan for 3 days now. It's a good thing he's on vacation, or else he'd have been kicked out of work with dirty rags. And if you describe everything in detail, to begin with, this year Nikita decided to diversify his vacation with a trip to the sea, to deal with quite mundane matters, to make repairs in the kitchen. "Everything suits me," he told his wife, looking at the wall, the stove, the kitchen set, and everything else. "Open your eyes, please. Is this a beautiful combination? It needs something much darker than the fringes, but can't we put in a normal faucet?" Nikita realized that Alma wouldn't give up that easily, and if she wants to change the look of the kitchen, he won't get away with it. So he had to order a new kitchen faucet online, and decided to buy everything else as he went along at the nearest hardware store. And it seems to have already begun to prepare for work, as here friends called on a fishing trip for the weekend. My friend never refused such pleasure, at least a couple of times during the season, and went out with the guys to fish and check if the stores spoiled vodka. "You said that you would start on Saturday with the walls, but you were going somewhere," scolded Alma her husband. "So I have almost a month of vacation. Nothing will happen in those 2 days." Nikita answered self-confidently and had no idea how everything will change during this time. "And then you'll think of something else not to do repairs," his wife said. "Yes, I will leave on Saturday morning and will be back on Sunday around evening. And if I try, then at lunchtime, and we'll get to work." "Couldn't you do it earlier?" Alma asked again. "You can't do it earlier. I won't be able to make it on foot. And Oscar's the one who's lucky this time." "You sure you can't?" My wife wouldn't let up, said Nikita out loud in the empty kitchen. Nikita wondered why Alma was not at home, but decided that she was either at the store or with a friend. Alma used to linger at her friend's, especially if she had a couple of glasses of wine. Nikita was attracted to watch TV. He thought he would wait for his wife and then tell her how and why he came back and how he lay there and fell asleep. A little alcohol, fatigue, and nerves quickly defrosted my friend. He woke up in the morning, got up on his elbows, looked around, and began to slowly sort things out. My wife was gone. Nikita got worried and called his wife. The caller is not a caller. He started pacing back and forth across the room, frantically thinking about what to do. It was not worth calling my parents, so as not to worry them before the time, to the police all the more. Something had to be done, and Nikita decided to look for his wife, to go to the store on his own, to ask around, and to show up at his friend's house. So he sat down on a chair in the corridor and began to put on his shoes. Suddenly, the door opened and Alma appeared in the corridor. It was almost 8 o'clock in the morning. "Oh, you came so early, but get undressed. I'll put the kettle on now. I was just running to the store for a cake, and my wife hurried into the kitchen." Nikita just sat there and didn't get up from the chair. "What do you mean you ran to get the cake? You were gathering wheat in the field to bake them." Alma laughed a loud laugh and did not take her husband's words seriously. Then she asked what kind of tea to make. Nikita exploded, yelled at his wife, and pointed her to the door. Then went into the kitchen, looked around, and said to himself, "There will be no repair here." And since then, for a few days now, the only thing he leaves the house is to go to the store for a new bottle. My friends and I first protested, but then we realized that the man needed to patch up the sole. That's how it turned out. Just a cat out the door. The mouse immediately ran away, and if she had spent the night at a friend's house, for example, she would not have said that she went to the store for a few minutes. So would have admitted that they say bored or scared alone. But if she tried to hide her absence, then she was hiding from boredom with a man. And apparently, she wasn't bored. Such is the story. Share in the comments what you think about this situation and the behavior of the characters.